Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Here we're going to have a look at a game in the Banter Blitz Cup between Wesley So and Sam Shankland. So has white and Shankland has black. The game began knight f3 d5, e3, knight f6. Now why does So play e3? Because he's going to go c4 and then we have a bishop defending this pawn. But this setup with knight here, pawn here is against Slav players. And Sam Shankland, he's released a new course on chessball, c6, knight c3, e6. So the normal structure for semi-Slav players, and now b3. You delay moving the d pawn because this bishop is going to come to b2, so you don't want a pawn here. So then the bishop is more active on b2. Also some other ideas coming up. So bishop d6, bishop b2, castle and queen c2. I've seen a few games like this where white is going to castle queen side, he's going to play rook g1 and then g4. And the fact that this bishop is not being blocked in by its own pawn means it can now be an attacker on b2. So queen c2, but Sam's released a course on chessball and he knows this setup. So he goes e5. We're saying if white doesn't take part of the center, then black is going to get the full center. So what happens after e5? Well, it does give white a chance to get the bishop here, but black is very far ahead in development. We're going to take with the pawn and knight b5. So you can't move the bishop or else knight c7. And notice knight on f3 and bishop on b2 attack e5. So knight c6. Defending your center, take, and now bishop b5. Threatening to capture on c6. Then white is going to have 2 on e5. Here Sam reacted with bishop g4, which led to a good position for white. Another option was knight b4, attacking the queen. The queen needs to go to c1, by the way, to stop queen c5. If queen b1, queen c5, and black is already winning. Attacking the bishop on b5 and threatening knight c2 check. After knight b4, queen c1, bishop f5, and black's moves are just so quick. Knight c2 is a threat, also rook c8. A nice way to play if you don't want to give up the e5 pawn, you could play e4 as well. And after knight d4, you can go bishop d7, bishop g4. This is a really nice position for black. However, bishop b5 played, bishop g4, leading to a white advantage. We're going to take on f3, and now Wesley made an error. And he played the normal recapture. But amazingly, bishop takes b7 works, and we have this very strange position after bishop takes g2. I've never seen this before, where both bishops are like this on squares b7 and g2, attacking both rooks in the corner. This leads to a nice position for white. Let's go rook g1. So black does the same, rook b8. And now instead of rook g2 and rook b7, where white might be okay, even though his king is still in the middle, we go queen c6. What a move, queen c6. If the queens come off, this pawn is weak. That's why queen c6 is so good. So take, and here white is winning. Let's say you go rook b6, attacking the bishop. Let's just tuck it back to a4. It looks very weird, but it's okay to put the bishop on the square because black center is going to crumble. You got to save your bishop on g2, and once you do, bishop e5, and this is over. Knight g4, bishop d4. This is the perfect bishop, just guarding everything. It's attacking this. This can be next. White's king is not in any danger. Rook g3 as well coming. So that was a really cool variation, but it is a blitz game, so it's okay for top players to miss these kind of moves. After the simple recapture, for me, it feels like white is still better. Because he's got the superior minor piece on b2 versus knight f6. It's got kingside attacking chances. The problem is this king. It's not so easy to castle. So gf3, bc6. Oh yeah, by the way, rook c8 doesn't work because it would be really nice if you could capture with a major piece on the c file. But queen f5 is such a cool move. You've got to get your piece back, but then you drop your pawn. So rook c6 is best, but then bishop e5 or queen e5 both look good. So that's why Sam had to recapture with the b pawn. Rook g1, and now d4, just shutting out this bishop. Rook c1, and rook a d8. So this is where Sam blundered, because he does chuck the c6 pawn, but this was part of his calculation. A normal looking move is to defend the pawn and then plan c5, further shutting out the bishop on b2. And here there's this really cool variation, and it just looks amazing. The central structure which you're about to see, which I've never seen before. You go f4, c5. So white tries to break up structure, but black supports his d4 pawn with yet another pawn. What a structure. f4. If you take, then bishop d4. And this just looks much better for white. So that's why. Let's go c5, and now queen f5 is just an awesome looking move. Putting pressure on here, because now white has queen and pawn attacking e5. E takes f4. Doesn't work because of this stunning move. Bishop takes d4. We saw this idea before. A queen coming to f5. Now in the other line it was attacking a pawn here, but now it's attacking the rook. You can't play this because rook c8. Get out the way of the c file, and now b4. Another brilliant looking move. I mean, I just love these moves. There you go. Just so elegant. And this type of move where you try and break up the structure, this is a move I've never really seen before. So much central tension. b4, if you take, then we'll take on e5, rook e5, and let's just go queen f4, just park it. Black can throw in a nice looking move like fe3, because black does have queen takes d2, so you can't waste time playing queen e5, because queen d2 is mate on f2. So king f1, then f2 mate. Let's go back, let's recapture, and then here white's a little bit better. The queens might come off, and then you can go rook c4, play this. And I would take white in this ending. White's got a pass central pawn, the better minor piece, the better rook, and probably the safer king. Back to the game, rook a d8 played. Losing a central pawn, but check out this calculation, because this is what Sam missed. And if a top player can miss this, then you can miss it as well. Queen c6, taking on e3, which looks okay, because after take, you're going to throw in the in-between check on f2. King takes, rook d6, and now bishop e5. And here, this is what Sam missed, because he thought you could play rook takes d2 check. In the game, he played rook e6, but the reason is rook d2 check doesn't work because king e3. And now the g file is the problem. If you use the rook to take a2, bishop f6, and we've just chucked a piece. So bishop e5, rook e6, and now d4. Why is a pawn up? A better minor piece. He's got 2 versus 1 on the queen side. But coming up is a very nice retreating move, so stick around for that. g6 played, rook c7, knight d5, rook a7, and now f6. So it looks like white is completely winning, and he is. Just got to be a bit careful not to give black any counterplay on the e file, bishop g3. And Sam played rook c8, planning to come into c2 now. If rook e8, rook e2 check is just a check. So let's give yourself some space. If check, king g1, and notice the rook on a7 defends a2. So bishop g3, that's why Sam changed his mind. Rook c8, rook e1, we're going to check, king f1, and here rooks came off. Notice knight e3 check doesn't lead to anything, because rook g2 check is just a second check, king h1, nothing more to say. So that's why after king f1, take, f5, trying to go f4, trying to clamp the bishop, but every pawn move is a weakness. So now you can park your bishop on e5. f4, let's check. King f8, and now rook d7. Very nice move, because it looks like Wesley just saw a little bit further than Sam. Tactic coming up. Knight e3, and now bishop f4 works. I love it. Even in the endgame, there are many tactical moments you got to keep calculating throughout the entire game. Bishop f4 works because the knight fork doesn't. Knight g2 check, king d1, and that's the problem. Even though your knight g2 check attacks my bishop, the rook on c2 is attacked, so you've got to save your rook. No time for black to take on f4, so rook takes a2, bishop h6 check, king e8, and now we take on h7. Knight h4. Knights are such tricky pieces, so put the knight on h4, and we got an idea of just taking on f3, but it could also come back to f5 if it wants to be a defensive piece. d5. Passed pawns must be pushed, but what now if black plays rook a5? And this is what was mentioned when Sam was talking about this game, because after rook a5, it looks like Wesley calculated a bit further. So pause the video. Can you find a move that indirectly saves the d5 pawn? And it's a beautiful move. I'll give you 5 seconds. The amazing retreating move is bishop d2. So Sam cannot take because your knight is hanging. And you're just a piece and 2 pawns up. Bishop d2, rook a1 check, king e2, knight f5, king d3, rook b1, king c4. Cool that the king is defending both passed pawns. Gonna march him soon, and after rook d1, bishop g5, Sam resigned. He had enough. Here you can see the final table in which Wesley So took this banter blitz match. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. That means, probably, you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like and maybe subscribe to the channel at the same time. Don't forget to hit that bell, because then YouTube will let you know when I release another video.